Any opposed? No, thank you. Right, we have item 12, the spatial land strategy for Dairy Flat and Silverdale future urban zones. We have Dave, thank you, and Warren's coming up as well. I hope you've been able to check in the attachments is very clear. A lot of details there. If people haven't had a look, it's good to have a look at now. Thank you.
So we'll start with Dave is going to give a presentation, and then I'll say a few words and we can answer questions. Thanks.
This paper is to seek the committees to adopt a spatial land use strategy for the Dairy Flat and Silverdale future urban zones. Now let me just get this. Did I go the wrong way? Here we go. So the purpose of the spatial land use strategy is to identify some high-level future land uses for the Dairy Flat and Silverdale future urban area. And the driver behind this was to inform the Ngāti Te Tupu Ngātahi Support and Growth Transport project, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide. Basically, that project is to support the long-term route protection through the designation process, particularly for a rapid transit corridor through the Dairy Flat area from Albany Station to Milldale. So what the strategy does is the key piece of land use relevant to that EC is really the location of a town centre for that future urban area. And this strategy, it kind of sits between the future development strategy, which you've already adopted, and structure plans, which will be done down the track and do more detailed investigation and sort of planning for these areas. So the Support and Growth Project, as you're probably aware, is an alliance between Waka Kotahi and Auckland Transport, and it's to deliver the route protection phase through the Support and Growth Programme. It's a long-term project for looking at the next 10 to 30 years, but notices of requirement for the transport infrastructure upgrades that have been identified were lodged in October last year, and its hearings for those are likely to occur the middle of this year. Just to set the scene of the area we're talking about, we're really looking at the future urban zone that sits to the west of the existing Hibiscus Coast and Silverdale area, but it extends as far south as Dairy Flat. And that future urban zone's been in the unitary plan since 2016, and some of that land was added, most of it was added through the IHP processes back then. The sort of important area that we're looking at in this context is the Dairy Flat future urban zone, which is a big area, over 1,700 hectares, with a potential for 65 to 73,000 dwellings. Now that includes the mixed MDRS, or the medium density residential standards. So that is, quite a high figure, and it gives, the MDRS gives the dwelling count quite a nudge. Back in 2022, a delegated group of the Planning Committee agreed that the draft strategy could go out for public consultation, and we had a public consultation and feedback period during July to August 2022, and that coincided with the engagement period that the Support and Growth Project had for the transport projects. On the draft that we sent out, there was 44% support for the strategy, and there was 56% didn't support it. I can go into the reasons for that in more detail if you wish. As a consequence, we did some further, as a result of the feedback and also further input from community facilities and healthy waters, we made some changes to the strategy. I'll just go back. If I can. Yeah, so the original proposal had the centre spanning from the rapid transit corridor through to Green Road Park. The initial position that we took was that it would be good to have a centre that built on that large future recreational amenity of Green Road Park. and we tried to see if we could work a centre that connected both the rapid transit corridor and the Green Road Pack. As a result of the changes and the advice from Healthy Waters and Packs, we've now focused the centre purely on the rapid transit corridor. Community facilities were of the view that things like libraries, civic facilities would be better located in the centre close to the rapid transit corridor rather than on or adjoining Green Road Pack. And the shift of the centre to where we've aligned it on the rapid transit corridor, that's the, oh, sorry. The centre is the pink blob in the middle. This is very conceptual, but the scale is based on some work that we had done on what size of centre that we would need. Moving the centre there means it doesn't actually cross any floodplains now, and it's clear of the floodplains in the area and clear of the revised floodplains that Healthy Waters have identified using the 3.8 degrees C climate change scenario. Well, there was also some changes occurred up on the north in the Pine Valley area, and that came about from the work that the Supporting Growth had done, where they identified a station, two potential stations in that area. One of them, the one near Pine Valley Road, potentially having a park and ride component. So we modified that to reflect you could get higher density development around the centre. Just on that sort of the orange circle is a sort of conceptual idea of where higher density development could occur around the centre. And it's roughly an 800 metre catchment, which is consistent with what we've been doing through Plan Change 78. So the key thing, while the centre and some of the residential area we've identified, or the high density residential area we've identified, as close to and spans floodplains, through the structure plan process and the future catchment management plan process, we'll be able to, at a more detailed level, address and integrate those floodplains into the future planning of the area, which will be, quite a long way down the track. The advantages of that centre location are that it's on the preferred rapid transit corridor alignment. It's generally centrally located within that big southern future urban zone area, so it means that a large number of people have got reasonable access to that centre in the future. And it also adjoins what the Supporting Growth team have identified as a future east-west connecting arterial between the Penlink interchange that's currently under construction and Dairy Flat Highway. We just want to highlight here that the future development strategy process put a pause on this exercise because it initially had some work or identified the Dairy Flat future urban area as an area for further investigation. Subsequently, through the FDS process, that work was looked at it. It didn't identify Dairy Flat as a future area for, in terms of, or a risk area in terms of natural hazards, and it didn't red flag the Dairy Flat area for flooding in particular. So the future development strategy confirmed the Dairy Flat area as a future urban area. What it did do was that it pushed out the time frame for development to beyond 2050, and that aligns with the significant infrastructure that's going to be required in the future to service that large area, particularly water, wastewater, and ultimately the actual building of the transport infrastructure that the Supporting Growth programme is route protecting for at the moment. And just to note too that the Auckland Unity Plan work on the strengthening the provisions around natural hazard management will also be relevant to the future consideration of this area going forward. We went to the local board on 2 occasions with late last year, and then we had a workshop with them on the 7th of February, and they had a business meeting on the 21st of February. The local board, which is resolutions which is attached to the agenda, raised a number of concerns about the strategy, flooding being one of them, but also just querying the whole future development of the area. The report in front of you addresses those concerns in detail later in the report. And we feel that those concerns have been addressed and will be addressed in the future when we get to the detailed structure planning and catchment management phase. So we are recommending to the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee to adopt the spatial land use strategy, and that will then help inform the support and growth NOR process. And we will go back to the people that made feedback and to the landowners that are affected by the centre location and the higher density residential areas, just to inform them that the draft strategy has been adopted, if that in fact is your decision today. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Dave. Once again, huge amount of work that's gone on here, and also want to acknowledge Louise Johnson and Councillor Sayers and the Rodney Local Board for giving very clear feedback and working with the, you all worked with those changes and the public feedback as well to get those changes in. Obviously, maybe not exactly what everyone wanted, but I think it's quite a bit different than it was before when we decided not to bring the report last year. So I think that was very good. Thank you. We have some questions. Councillor Sayers, did you want to move this, or are you keen for... I'm happy to move it if you're still unsure.
Yeah, I'd like to ask some questions and go through, so maybe get it moved by yourself and seconded if you can.
I'm happy to move and seconder, Councillor Henderson. And first up, I'll have Member Henare and then Councillor Sayers. Member Henare.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, just a couple of questions. First of all, on the issue of where Ngāti Manuhiri sits, are they happy with where things are, and what's the future for them in terms of further not only consultation but working quite closely together?
We had the almost luxury of having access to a cultural values assessment that Manuhiri had prepared for the Support and Growth Programme. So we had a clear indication from them in that CVA about the position, and we've outlined that in the report. Going forward, there'll be a lot of opportunity for involvement when we get to the structure planning stage and to the catchment management planning stage for further input. And a lot of the detailed concerns were particularly around streams and the stream network and managing and working with those properly.
Do you think that going forward, you'll take, I suppose, will you take Manuhiri with you?
Yes, and we have we've engaged with Manuhiri and other iwi right from the beginning of this process. We advised them we were doing it. We had input from them for the draft. We met with them after the draft was out. We had comment, and then we got the, as I said before, the CVA that was done for the Support and Growth Programme was really helpful in informing more clearly the views of iwi in this area. And we will continue to go. We will advise them of the adoption of the report.
Sorry. I don't want to be sound facetious in any way, but I was up there not so long ago picking up some stuff that I bought on Marketplace, and I hadn't been up there for a while, and I was just blown away by the amount of houses and the development up there. Do you think that the horse might have bolted?
No, because the houses that are being built up there now, which is probably the Milldale development that you're referring to, that's been rezoned for some time, and it was rezoned through the SHA, what was it, the Special Housing Area process, and then the zoning was included in the unitary plan at the time of the IHP, so that probably didn't go through as rigorous a process as what you would normally expect using the SHA fast track process. But going forward, so I don't think the horse has bolted in terms of the land that's still zoned future urban and hasn't yet been even structure planned for further development. So in that respect,
Okay.
the land we're talking about here, no, I don't think the horse has bolted.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Member Hanare. Yeah, this will connect into that development, but this is only on the land that is undeveloped so far. That yeah, kia ora. Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Just to take up that opportunity to tease out the common themes that were there in that terms of feedback that were kind of opposed, you know, that 56%. What were the common themes between the Rodney local board's concerns and what you could see coming in from the general public? And can you summarise those at all?
Yes, there was common themes, and I guess to some extent the local board feedback probably reflected the feedback that we got when that was reported back at the time we reported the draft and the feedback back in November. The key themes were, well, there was questions around questioning the need for the future development or the future urban area in the first place, and did we really need that amount of growth? Well, the future development strategy considered that and has kind of addressed that. There was issues around the flooding and the original centre location spanning floodplains, particularly the ones immediately north and south of Dairy Flat Highway. Well, we've addressed that as well. And we've strengthened up the provisions in the strategy around recognising that the structure planning process and catchment management plan process will be able to address those in more detail. And we did go back to Healthy Waters to test the feedback that we got in terms of whether what we were proposing was workable going forward. And at this stage in the process and for this level of development, they provided that support to us. There was an issue raised around the long time frame that landowners there are going to be affected in the future, but really it's a bit hard to do any forward planning without affecting landowners somewhere. So yes, we acknowledge that that's something that happens, that future landowners are going to have to deal with and then can be involved in the structure plan process going forward. But it's a bit hard to plan ahead and not create this sort of situation. They were the main points of opposition. I mean, we did have support as well. There was feedback from people saying this is a great idea, it's the logical next extension from Albany, between Albany and Silverdale. There was people saying, get on with it, let's do it, we need it now. So there was mixed support, but most, or the majority were slightly concerned about the centre primarily expanding the stream network. And
if I may, Chair, there's an item D up there that's been added in that you consulted with the local board member Louise Johnson and I on, or you didn't, but Warren and Pete did. So that's, just to be clear, do you want to comment on what that's trying to capture? Just for clarity.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was really trying to, as talking with the Deputy Chair of the Rodney Local Board, really trying to ensure that people understood that we had taken into account the potential for flooding in this area, and that we had changed the centre as a result of that feedback and as a result of the technical feedback we got, particularly from Healthy Waters. So we'll advise them of the changes that's been made, but particularly to make sure they realise that this document is not a statutory document from which development will start to happen immediately, and that before it becomes anything like that, we will need to do a lot of further work, and that's particularly catchment management plan, a detailed structure plan, and then a plan change. Now, all of that will take a while. You'll be aware that this, and I think some people weren't aware that this area is now, as a result of the future development strategy, not sequenced for development until 2050 onwards. So we have a number of iterations of the unitary plan to go through. We have, for example, our hazards plan change to go through, and this will all ensure all of the work that we do from now up to the structure plan will mean that we'll have extremely tight conditions around where housing might be built. So that's a real positive. We've got time to do this. This is not retroactive or retrospective planning in any way. This gives us the chance for information to be brought together and planning decisions made as a result of that. So that's what we agreed with yesterday with Deputy Chair Johnson and Councillor Sayers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no further questions. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Got a few questions. The first question I've got is just around the housing capacity that is envisaged to be provided here. In the document that you've got in the attachment, there's a huge difference between the impact of the medium density rules and what might happen otherwise. I mean, it's a quantum leap. Do you want to make any comment on that, Warren?
Yeah, at the time that we were putting together the strategy, we had some work done about reflecting the NPSUD and also the MDRS, and that kind of scaled up the potential number of dwellings that could go in the area. The work that we had around that did qualify it, though, that that scale may not be achieved because it would have taken up a huge proportion of Auckland's growth, and it all wasn't going to go here. But it just was to give a sense of the scale of the sort of centre or urban area we were talking about. Any changes that arise out of the NPSUD or the MDRS that might be forthcoming from the central government would change those figures. And even taking MDRS out could reduce it by 15 to 20,000 dwellings at that sort of order. So the actual size is still a little bit flexible, but we took a conservative approach in thinking what size the centre might be.
Okay. The other question I've got just goes to the workability of this many dwellings. Given the constraints over the shore, I mean the motorway that serves as the prime transport corridor, together with the busway, only has a certain amount of capacity. I mean, I would suggest it's at capacity now in terms of congestion. So how does this actually work? Not everybody is going to use the rapid transit corridor, and even if they do, they're going to want to have mobility at other times on the weekend and for leisure opportunities and so on. Has there been any modelling done on this?
Councillor Walker, or through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there has, because that's the whole point of the supporting growth piece of work. It was to identify what transport upgrades would be required going forward, and that's quite a broad suite of work, which includes motorway widening, it includes the rapid transit corridor, it includes local arterial upgrading. So, I mean, the whole point of this exercise was to identify those transport upgrades that would be needed going forward.
Okay, I mean, I guess my concern is that I can't see any further widening through the North Shore, Greville, Constellation and the like. That's already occurred and elsewhere. assuming that there aren't any upgrades proposed there, in which case, where are the upgrades?
Well, I think the key upgrade in that context is the rapid transit corridor. All through this work, the approach has been mode neutral in terms of that rapid transit corridor, whether it would be a busway or whether it could be light rail, which would then, that would significantly increase the capacity. The other work has also got dedicated, is looking at possibly dedicated bus lanes from the Albany station up to Silverdale, even in the shorter term. But the key is that rapid transit corridor.
So you're confident that that this is workable in terms of congestion, mobility, particularly if we have the 65,000 number of homes in the area south of the industrial area that's mentioned.
Well, just on that, that's a good point, as the industrial area is, partly designed to provide some local employment as well, to avoid some of that commuting down the motorway. I mean, I think we have to accept that or be comfortable with the work that Support and Growth done and the modelling they've done in terms of what the capacity requirements are for that corridor, and that's why it's been kept mode neutral in terms of whether it could be light rail or a busway. But I mean, it's a long-term planning exercise. So I mean, stuff's going to change as time goes on. So we can only know what we know now.
All right. I mean, the other related concern that I continue to have is around flooding, and for the ability for the stormwater to egress, based around real constraints. And if we have a storm and the likelihood of storm surge and so on, how is the stormwater going to escape unless you're proposing a massive amount of detention? And frankly, that may be prohibitive as well.
Councillor Walker, I think that's the point of doing the extra work a bit further down the track, a catchment management plan which will look at all of the stormwater within that area and how that can best be managed, and there can be a number of different ways. I mean, detention ponds clearly are one of them, but there can be other ways of trying to manage stormwater and getting it away fairly quickly. We have got time on our side for that study, and that'll be pretty comprehensive.
Okay, well, I guess the concern that I raise in advance is I have real doubts around the ability to manage that stormwater, and I would have hoped that we would have made some of these definitive assessments a lot earlier. It's called Dairy Flat for a reason. It's already subjected to a significant amount of flooding, so I have a big concern there. So look, I'll just put that on the table. The other question I've got is around the town centre. There's already a town centre, obviously, up at Silverdale. There's significant development that's taken place up in Highgate as well that's catering for activity. And then you've got Westgate at Albany that's in really close proximity. So is there some rationale for having another centre? And the size that you're proposing, 39 to 49 hectares, is not small.
The work we had done on this, on the basis of the potential population growth, identified that scale of centre. It is on the bigger side, and we took a conservative approach in identifying something rather a little bit bigger than perhaps might be needed. Again, it depends on what happens with the MDRS and NPSUD provisions going forward. As part of the exercise, in terms of sizing that centre, the work took into account the location of Albany and the location of Silverdale. and in fact drew a parallel that in the south around Drury, the distance between the centres and the town centres is very similar here, and the size of the Drury town centre and this town centre is also very similar. So the work did take into account the existing Albany and Silverdale, because that was raised in feedback, but it was just understanding the total catchment that could potentially service that centre.
Okay, and the last question I've got just goes to the household numbers and the population numbers associated that you're projecting. Obviously, they're really substantial. You mentioned 40,000 population at one point, but then that's based on the regional growth strategy, but then that's modified to these much bigger numbers. And I'm assuming there's a base of population that's already across the zone up in Milldale, because there's been a lot of population there. Are there any additional figures you've got around a breakdown that can give us an idea of what sort of population numbers we're looking north of the Harbour Bridge?
We're not at hand, but we could get some of that data from the Future Development Strategy and the REMU team.
Okay, I think there's some urgency around that. I'd really like that fairly soon, because again, my major concern is just around the existing congestion across the network, and that's based around an existing rapid transit system that's reasonably effective now. I just don't know how we're going to cope. So if you could get back to me on that soon, Dave, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I guess the issue with the order we're in is that some of those things weren't brought up during the future development strategy that we've already approved. So especially red flagging and floodplains, and a lot of people wanted things removed out, but there wasn't many. I don't remember people wanting to put more in. So we're at this stage now. But
I've certainly raised all the points that I'm raising now consistently at every point in the process.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Turner.
Thank you very much. Your answer to my question might be, do you want specialist training, Mr. Turner? And the answer will be yes. I'm just trying to dissect this stuff. You made the comment there that this is non-statutory, yet you said it will inform. Doesn't non-statutory mean no teeth? Doesn't that mean it's just an idea?
It's more than an idea. It's in this case, because there was not a structure plan for that area, and the reason that we don't have a structure plan is that development is not timed to take place for another 20 years, and it didn't seem sensible to try and do a structure plan at this point. But in order to help work out where the preferred route might be through the Silverdale Dairy Flat area, particularly the Dairy Flat part, the lower part, it was considered that we should do some sort of a preliminary land use study, working together with a number of different transport, healthy waters, planning, economics and iwi input. It was sensible to bring together a study, if you like, which would say this is a logical layout for this area, and then you overlay the transport route, and this has given strength to the transport route in terms of where it goes through Dairy Flat. That's really the key reason that we did that. So it will, when we say it's going to inform the development of the area, it will be presented at the hearing for supporting growth in mid-year, to be able to say this is the basis on which we have developed the route. So that's what we mean by informing that part of the process. But it's not a zoning plan, and it can't be used for someone who wants to develop in an area at the moment. It is still a future urban zone.
So is the Auckland Code of Practice for Land Development and Subdivision, is that a statutory document or another one of these informatory documents?
I'm not sure about that one. That sounds like a resource consent.
So in that document, and because you mentioned about planning and modelling and you talked about floodplains, and in that document it says 4.3.5.6, secondary overland flow paths shall be designed with sufficient capacity to accommodate a 1% AEP storm event, assuming the following conditions of the primary network. Any pipes below 600 millimetres are 100% blocked. Any pipes between that and a metre are 50% blocked, and all other pipes at least 10% blocked. That then gets chucked into the people who are coming to do planning, to modelling, to ask to be able to build in this place in 50 years' time. And that's almost saying infrastructure, you've got to consider it doesn't exist. So the only thing I'm struggling with here is, how does this all work? In 50 years' time, we're going to, or 20 years' time, when this starts going ahead, we're just going to be back talking about academic stuff. Is that not right?
What we have got time to do over the next 20 years is to design and plan for a water-sensitive development, a settlement. So I know you're talking about some details there, but and I imagine that in 20 years' time there will be even more stringent rules. But it doesn't mean that large parts of this area cannot be carefully designed for future residential development. And that's what I say about the work that we'll be doing later on. Sure, so you've raised some good points, and I think you're probably ahead of yourself there, or ahead of us anyway.
Ahead of myself, thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Turner. There are no more questions on this. I think that means that everyone is happy to move to debate, so thank you very much for all the work done on this. Right, are there any speakers? Kia ora, Councillor Dalton.
Thank you. Really just wanted to appreciate the work that's gone into this from our team, from the staff. That feedback, the public response was quite significant in terms of oppose, and to be able to sit down with the local board and Councillor Sayers too, and try and work their way through this. This is big change, right, for an area, and something that we're all getting used to. But going back to what Councillor Turner spoke about, you know, a bit of a 101 on where everything fits, because we sit here and we get these strategies that are, well, they're 25 years out, and what does that look like? And we only know what we know today. And what are the things that are guiding us to that? And I think what it means to us is the importance of our decision making and where we place our investment. So when we're developing our policies, in response mostly to government policy as well, that we are ensuring that we're looking for the things that we are victims of at the moment, which is congestion, which is flooding, by building in the wrong places. All of this knowledge that we've gained over the past couple of years is there to help us. And if we can take that regional perspective for any area that we're looking at and try and get that context of time, what that looks like in 25 years, as might have been Warren that said, there'll be a few more FDSs before then, there'll be a couple more LTPs before then, so we have got time to do it, and Councillor Turner will know that engineering changes, and actually quite rapidly in the last 10, 20, 30 years. And so we have the opportunity to design things well as long as we are willing to invest in that and set the right direction for the growth of our city, which means multimodal travel, as well as ensuring that we're building in the right places. And when it comes to stormwater infrastructure, I hear what Councillor Walker is saying too. You know, Dairy Flat's called Dairy Flat for a reason, perhaps. But when we have a look at, and we're constantly told by developers too, the designs that can be built now, designed to be able to mitigate, so we can build in areas like Dairy Flats, are improving all the time. So really, I think it's a good reminder for us to really have our focus on building for the future of the city and all the different parts of the city. Some parts that will not be wanting the change that's coming to them, but we have a growing population, so how do we make that work for everybody? So thank you to Dave and Warren and the team for all the work that's gone into this so far. And it'll be great to see how this progresses over time, just like Drury, and be able to mitigate the challenges that we're confronted with as we go on to the next development that is going to come along as well, to build houses for the population of our city. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Deputy Chair. Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Just echoing Angela Dalton's, Councillor Dalton's acknowledgement of the planning team. I suspect that this will pass because it's seen as, you know, progressing the city forward, and by adding in that D, that is that's been worked up to try and give the community in that area some top of mind and instant awareness of the efforts that the council will go to in terms of catchment plans and structure plans to mitigate some of those concerns that they have, which, you know, are particularly around flooding. Also, that rapid transport corridor, just where it goes, it hasn't been an Auckland Council decision, that's been the Supporting Growth Alliance decision, and our good friends in the planning department are having to respond to that regardless if they think it's the right spot, or if the community thinks it's the right spot, or if the local board thinks it's in the right location, or if I think it's in the right location. It's just something that they've had to been forced to respond to. I just want to paint a picture for my colleagues about Dairy Flat, because not everyone's been there. Toe went up to Milldale. That's quite well advanced in terms of its build, but this area's, in the storms that we had recently, Dairy Flat. Yeah, it's called Dairy Flat because it is so flat, and the amount of damage, households that were lost, red stickers that were put through that area was very high, and the community's fears are very real because they're living it. They're living a reality where houses have been consented in flooded areas. You know. They're living today in a world where new consents are being issued where flooding will occur. All those protections that we're hoping for, they aren't in place yet, those new rules. The guarantee that a catchment plan or structure plan in the future is going to mitigate those fears around flooding are kind of what we hope, what we're wishing for, what we'd like to have happen. But in terms of the public, there's no guarantee. Even though it's my area and I've worked to try and get D in there, which councillors might support, the reality is the political mandate that I have from 60% of that community and my own local board is one that they don't want me to support this. I just don't have that political mandate for that area. Maybe when the structure plan is advanced or the catchment plans, those mandates to myself might well advance and change. I don't know. I think those covers all the points. At the policy level, we're trying our very best to do the right thing here, but when it gets down to resource consenting and the tyre hitting the road, there's serious concerns in my mind and of others about just how well that area would really cope, and we just don't know that answer yet. So, unfortunately, Chair, I will be voting against this.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
A couple of quick comments, Mr. Chair. I guess historically speaking, this region was always regarded as a green belt between the North Shore and the Hibiscus Coast, and was treated as being somewhat sacrosanct there. With the advent of the super city, that buffer or that protection or that kind of publicly accepted notion of separation and green space went very quickly. We now have the prospect subsequently of this, massive growth. And Councillor Sayers is absolutely correct in everything he says about Dairy Flat, the Hibiscus Coast. Councillor Walker in my area, of course, abuts that, and anyone who was involved with the Rodney District Council was certainly well aware of the vulnerability to quite significant flooding, and as I think Councillor Sayers said, that was very evident in those weather events last year. So there are people with genuine concerns here. I know the officers that have presented to us, certainly as far as the Rodney Legacy area goes, has as good a knowledge as anyone, and we're certainly really appreciative of that knowledge and expertise they bring to not just the Rodney ward, but to the Albany ward too. So we're fortunate in that respect. There is a bit of an irony, in my view anyway, with this planning, this whole supporting growth, the huge resource that's been going into this for this planning that is some decades down the track, and it really makes you wonder to what extent the developments on the ground in between will have an impact on that. But it is what it is. It's before us now. We can only hope that some of the assurances that have been given up here in respect of both dealing with the community and addressing a number of these issues that still are just sitting there are indeed picked up in the interim. So I know that Councillor Walker, I don't know if he's on the line, but he's certainly been the epitome of consistency for about 2 decades now in respect of the Dairy Flat region and its sort of its ultimate inappropriateness for large-scale intensive development that has fallen on deaf ears, unfortunately, like a number of things. But I guess my vote here is going to be determined by the assurances given by David Warren and Peter working in the background, and we'll have to make sure that over that intervening time these sequence of quite significant concerns are addressed, and that the local population are brought along with that, because as the numbers are there, we're dealing with huge potential numbers. Personally, I would like to have seen it retain as a green belt. There's already enough development occurring up in Milldale, Millwater, and will continue there. Big numbers. It's going to be just this massive conurbation, and that raises questions itself. But that's out of our control at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, and just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Sayers for D. I think that really does move it forward more, and I think it addresses the residents' concerns more as well. So thank you for that. honestly, we need to build neighbourhoods as well as houses, right? We need to take into account all the planning structures and things like transport and parks and create a beautiful future for the future residents of the place, right? So I think that D is a really good step toward that. So I'm thankful for it. Just the other thing I'd note is that this is a hard conversation, and we've had some of these before. We'll have more of these in the future. Well, I totally get it, but this is conversations you have to have when you don't zone properly in the central city, when you don't actually enable more people to live near where they work, near where they study, near where there are great public transport links. And in a lot of cases, that land is within central Auckland. We've chosen numerous times to not zone that area properly. That means the housing has to go somewhere. And so it's going in places which many people are kind of feeling less desirable, and I understand that view. Just before I yield the floor, Chair, I just want to congratulate the Wellington City Council for their wisdom today in going about fixing their house zoning, and I hope that we can show the same wisdom when we're called upon to do likewise later. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? No, I'll just briefly say I agree with all the speakers, but I guess we are, unfortunately, in my opinion, where we are because of decisions were made before most of us were here on, I would love for this to be a green belt. I remember when Albany, when I was a kid, was farmland and there were no houses out there. The issue remains, as Councillor Henderson says, is that if there is no intensification in some of our central city suburbs and there's more character protection and things like that, housing has to go somewhere. This was zoned a number of years ago, and this isn't about allowing housing. That is going to happen. We obviously delayed it quite a bit with the FDS, but this is essentially trying to bring it together to make sense. And I thank the team for listening to community and the local board and councillor sayers to try and mitigate some of that by shifting that town centre away so it doesn't cross the flood-prone areas, and also moving it to make more sense with the rapid transit network, which will, cross fingers, there'll be a government sometime that will want to significantly invest in rapid transit across our city, and we will keep pushing for that as a council, I hope. But there are good things in here, but this is not, I want to make sure that people know this is not us making a decision today to allow future development. That has been long before us. This is about us trying to coordinate it in a way so that people have certainty when we do have those statutory documents come forward about exactly where homes can go, and then those resource consents after that. But of course, this is a long way off, but it does start to give communities in Auckland North an understanding of where things will be going, and that certainty for the development community and things as well. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Yes, it sounds like Councillor
Opposed.
Sayers, Councillor Lee, Councillor Walker, Councillor Turner would like to be noted opposed.
Was there one more online?
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh, we did.
Councillor Walker, yeah. Kia ora. Thank you all. That was all. Right, we're on to item 13, and I think